Device.
All good.
Okay.
And we have a quorum. Present are Bob Lyons, Don Knorr, Dan Ramsey, Carl Stumpf, and Kendra Wokus.
All right, then I'll call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. Our first agenda item is the minutes of May 23rd, 2022.
I will make a motion to approve those minutes. This is Wokus.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Carl, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the May 23rd minutes are approved. Item number 2 is salt shed roof replacement award of bid.
Yeah, so we had put that out with a couple of different alternates, one for traditional asphalt shingles on our salt shed roof, and another one for what we would have hoped to be a more permanent solution of metal standing seam roofing. But the metal roofing was much, much more expensive than we had estimated, and I'm not certain why. The asphalt was a little bit more than we had estimated. But it's within budget, so the recommendation is for asphalt re-roof.
John, I have a question. I understand the numbers here, but what is the life expectancy of the metal roof as opposed to the asphalt shingle roof? Do you know?
Well, and warranties on roofing is always a bit of a hit and miss kind of thing, but what we were looking at was said to have a 50-year expected life.
50?
Yep.
And the shingles are what?
Well, they would call that a 30-year shingle for what we're looking at. These are pretty beefy shingles.
Probably 25 in reality.
Yeah, if we get 20 out of them, they get a lot of wind coming off over the highway right there, which has been its problem. But it didn't seem justified to chase after the extra money to put the metal on.
All right.
Ramsey will move that we recommend to the city council to award the bid to Midwest Roofing for 27 or 20, what was it?
Yep, 27,505.
27,505.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second to Dan's motion?
Don, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I just ask one question? This is Wokus. I realize that I am new to all this, so if this is from left field, let me know. So this project was already in the budget for this last year, correct?
For this year, correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
have you put this in the budget before, or is this one of those things you knew that this was the year it was going to be up to do? I'm just wondering if we push it forward to another year and get the metal roof, or is this something that we need to do?
It really needs to be done. We patched it a little bit last year already, where it was just missing some shingles. So we just told the guy, whatever color you got on your truck, that's what we need on our roof. You know, and they did that for like $1,000, but it's just done.
Okay. So now is the time that it needs to happen.
It really does.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and the Council, I guess. Item number 3.
Yeah, this took a while to put together, but over in Greenway Station, where Deming Way and Market Street meet, just southwest of that little roundabout that's in Deming Way, DSW Shoe Warehouse wants to move from the west side of that largish multi-tenant building over to the east side. And as part of that, they want to do a little bit of exterior work on some of the raised metal grating catwalks outside the building, one of which has an exterior stairway that's going to need some concrete piers that would be in our sanitary sewer easement. And so, as is typical when someone proposes an improvement in one of our easement areas, we negotiated an encroachment agreement with them. And we finally got to a point where I could recommend it to the committee. So I did tell them they could start work without us and we'd catch up on paperwork, but with the intention we'd catch up soon.
I'm not sure that I understand the walkway. They're going to move from, I get where they are now, and they're going to move east from there to the corner into what at one point used to be the Orvis building or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And outside the building, some of the doorways, in fact, one of the doorways is, they're cutting in an overhead door kind of right here. Now, let me back up for a sec. This double line is the corner of the building along Market Street, if you will.
Okay.
So west of that corner, they already did cut in an overhead door, and they've got little pieces of the elevated walkway right by this. Let me zoom in on that just a little bit. See if that's better. So right by this exterior door, they've already got an elevated walkway, and then by these two doors, they've got some elevated walkway, one of which has a ramp that comes down to the sidewalk. And they kind of want to just fill that all in with elevated walkways. So where you see this is darker, that would be what they're proposing to put in. Kind of this
It's
rectangle.
elevated how high?
Oh, I would say it's maybe 4 or so feet off the ground,
Okay.
give or take. And until they get into the tan area, that's not our easement. This is just other generic utility that's kind of highlighted in green, if you will. But if I were to really zoom in, you would just see just the end of that stairway gets into our sewer and water easement. Does that make sense? And then there are a couple of things that are existing easements. There's this concrete ramp that comes down next to their driveway, and then tucked inside of that is a mechanical scissor lift, both of which were built without an easement encroachment. They said that this concrete would just be slab on grade, but it clearly was not built that way. They said this scissor lift would be mechanical but not electrically driven, and it wasn't built that way. So this is a little bit catching up with acknowledging some of what was actually done versus what had been approved to be done.
So are they going to remove the electrical connection that was referenced in your memo?
I'm not proposing that they do that, mostly because it's surface mounted, so we can see it right there. And we wouldn't be the ones digging into that. We would order them to, cut that or remove it, as the case may be, but at least it's not buried. It's visible.
Okay.
What is the power main easement? Is that MG&E?
It's actually a general utility easement. They just called it a power main easement, and I haven't the slightest idea why. There's a big transformer right here where that box with the E is. And I gotta believe their main power is coming right through there instead of along the building. But it was just platted as a 10-foot easement, and then 4 feet of that was vacated, so they only have 6 feet left. But it's nothing we track or even really try to protect.
All right, committee, any other questions, comments? Sean, I have one related question, general question. Who is responsible for maintaining that street that goes through the mall? That's Deming Way on either side of the mall. Does the city plow through snow plow and stuff through the middle of the mall around that roundabout and stuff? That's city maintenance, or do they have their own landscapers do that?
Yeah, it's a little of both. Right, it's a public street, so we're in charge of snow removal, but we don't go around that little circle. We just plow the street, if you will, and then they do the cleanup, crosswalks, and all that other stuff that they've built out there. The fountain maintenance, that's all theirs. Per agreement, that's all theirs. They had originally told the city when it was being reviewed for approval that they would maintain that via agreement, but of course that agreement never got finished negotiating or signed. And to some degree, I'm not really sure we can, as the city, assign private responsibilities to a public street anyway. They didn't want it as a private street. So yeah, we've been plowing and salting that,
Okay,
but not the specialty stuff.
yeah, all right. All right, any other questions, comments, committee? What's your pleasure?
Do we have a motion?
We do not, no.
Ramsey will move to approve the easement.
All right, we have a motion to approve the easement agreement. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second, but it does say recommend to common council, so it's,
All right,
Yeah.
Okay.
all right,
That's
we
what I
have a
thought.
motion and a second to recommend the easement agreement to the council. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the council. Okay.
Zoom this down. So the next two items are really here for I hope that didn't open something. For discussion from recommendations, and the first of those is from the Ped Bike Transit Committee. The draft minutes of the I think it was 5/26 meeting are embedded in here, and we've got this memo from Mark Opitz, who's with us tonight, to talk with the committee about the input for a brand new complete streets policy.
Thank you, Sean, and committee members. I believe I know most of you. Let's see, Kendra's on here now. Carl, Don, who else is here? Bob, Dan. Am I missing somebody?
Nope, just those five.
This is fine, okay. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. We have, for several years, been talking about developing a complete streets policy that's adopted by the city. And so the comprehensive plan, which the city adopted last year, identified that as an action item, and we are now we've drafted a policy for your review. Ped Bike Transit Committee took a look at it in May, as Sean noted. Since then, I've actually found, well, let me back up. So then I looked at other Wisconsin communities, what their approaches were, Milwaukee, Stevens Point, I think it was, La Crosse. I looked at several communities and kind of took their ideas, some of their ideas, and in some cases, some of the language and tailored it for the city. Since then, I actually came across the Cleveland Heights, Ohio, complete and green streets policy. And so that's why I included that link in the memo as well. That follows the template that is a national template called Elements of a Complete Streets Policy. So I had thought about overhauling the policy, the resolution to reflect that organizational structure. But before I did any more work, I wanted to get your feedback, and also tomorrow the Plan Commission. So that's my backup, my background I'm providing for you for your discussion.
Okay. Comments,
So
committee?
Yeah, I didn't know if there was a way you want to go through this, if you wanted to go through it page by page, or if anyone has pre-written comments that we should discuss.
I don't know, does anybody want to go through it page by page?
What I'll say is that the feedback we got from PedBike, yes, if you can go there, thank you, Sean. Their initial feedback was the desirability of replacing should statements with will or shall statements, which is kind of humorous because when I discussed this with Sean, he actually preferred the should statements. So I had originally had will and shall statements, and then they got replaced with should. So that's one area of discussion that would be helpful to get your feedback on.
And part of it, and I apologize, Mark, I know you and I had gone through a different version of this, an earlier version of this, and I think it's been nicely updated. I think there's still some language that's not pinned down, and that's, I think, why I was heading more toward should, things
okay.
that are aspirational, just because they're not measurable. You know, for instance, it says, you know, that we should maximize the comfort of all road users, right? But I don't know what that means or how to define that. So
I have that problem with the whole policy.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the specifics? I Google complete streets on the internet, and, you know, I get to the Department of Transportation. I mean, everything is really esoteric. What does it mean? I mean, does it mean that we need sidewalks? I mean, we need specifics, I think, to really incorporate this into a policy. And I mean, we've been talking about this so I've been on this committee for 2 years, and it comes up all the time, especially when we're doing street renovations and we need sidewalks and that. Well, we just refer to complete streets, but I don't see anything in terms of meaningful specifics for that, other than, I mean, I can go to, you know, the city of Los Angeles, and they have documented some of that stuff, but there is nothing that I see as an overall specific guideline, which is frustrating, frankly.
Yeah, Carl, and I appreciate that comment. One of the struggles I had was how to establish performance measures that we can actually routinely report on as staff. And then, of course, that introduces the element of time that it takes to assess where we are every year with our various performance measures. So this is the type of feedback we want to help us inform the policy. So I appreciate your feedback.
yeah, I really liked the way, you know, and it's to Carl's point that while it doesn't give me as a designer or even manager of consultant designers standards or performance criteria, it does at least say, you know, in this priority order, we want to consider design elements, right? And I think that's handy. Where I got a little bit sidetracked, even just reading this list, was, I mean, I'd stop the sentence after saying we want to encourage walking, biking, transit trips, because I don't know exactly then how to consider the context of the surrounding community as well as the broader urban design needs of the city. Are those balancing competing interests, or are they the same thing? And what does that mean?
That's very subjective in nature. I mean, it's
So
up
to
to
throw
the,
something out that says we support walking and biking and transit trips, I think is helpful. Or if the city could even take that on and say, yep, we really want to do these things in this order, and private automobiles is at the bottom of the list. If that's what the city wants, then we should be doing that. But I don't know who would do the context of the surrounding community.
So from a public works standpoint then, Sean, for you, and Carl, to your point, then having a list of actionable things to do so that when we go to design, we can say to the designers, we want this, 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 and this. Is that kind of, and this is kind of, the way this is written, it's written more as a, almost as a mission statement. It's not really a working document for you to print off and take to a designer and say, we want to redo Elmwood and we want you to do this. Is that what
Yeah.
the frustration that I'm hearing, Carl? Would that be an accurate?
Yeah, and also to use in public hearings,
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, say again.
to use in public hearings. You know, when we have public hearings related to these renovation projects,
Mm-hmm.
We can all,
we have something to say, this is what we used as a guideline.
Sure.
well, I mean, we've been in situations several times fairly recently where, in spite of what we have said to the designers of various projects, when we get to the public hearing stage and the neighborhood input stage, people mass against sidewalks or what have you. And we have not been able to say it is the city's policy that in these neighborhoods now, we're going to retrofit sidewalks. It didn't have them before. So in some cases, we have done that, and in other cases, we have bowed to neighborhood pressure and say, continue on without sidewalks if you like. And I don't know that,
Right.
pardon?
Exactly.
And I don't know that a
agree.
policy like this helps that a whole lot. I mean, if it specifically says there will be sidewalks retrofitted into neighborhoods as we redo streets, then that's fine. That's what we'll do. And we'll just tell the neighborhood that is the city policy. And if you don't like it, you'll have to elect some people who are going to change the city policy. But we're going to follow the policy.
Right. So for instance, when we were doing the school, the neighborhood streets just east of Cromrie, and looked at sidewalks there, or on Wood Road, just west of, the elementary school. And we told the designer, look into sidewalks because we really want sidewalks. But we didn't have any particular policy to point at that said we really want sidewalks. We just knew we really wanted them. But then in both of those instances, after design and endorsement, we ended up not keeping them in the design. And I think this is an effort to put into writing what we keep saying we want is the goal of the future of the city. And it gives them some guidance to say, we're not just making this up. We want pedestrians top of the list and bicyclists and transit riders. And if we have to give up an on-street parking lane, so be it, because they're down near the bottom of the list.
I mean, I support your comments about Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I assume it was your memo that basically talked about that. Something like that. I mean, it's on page 20. I don't know what that says. I didn't look that one up, but I will.
I looked at it and their policy referenced that they're going to keep a map, but I couldn't find their map. I was interested in seeing that.
If you want to just click on that link or the elements of a complete streets policy that may, well, let's go do Cleveland since that was brought up, Cleveland Heights. It was the structure and obviously substance of it too that intrigued me. Let's see if I'm trying to remember if this was. Let's see here. I think it was, oh, that was it. Oh, here it is. It's the exhibit. Yeah, this had specific, cited by, organized by each of the elements with subheadings. It was much more, it was more user-friendly, better organized than what I had put together based on the communities I had reviewed. And like Sean said, there's this map. I didn't dig any further beyond this.
I just went to their website because I thought, oh, all their complete street stuff will be here. And it was basically the policy. And then here's these 2 projects we're doing.
Yeah. I did read that Cleveland Heights, for what it's worth, the national organizations that deal with complete streets have held Cleveland Heights in some fairly high regard with this policy. It was, I guess, got an award or something like that. But, it matters what works for Middleton, obviously. And I agree that having a document that is general with platitudes isn't helpful as something that's more specific that we can point to that is an action plan. So I think that's why, go ahead.
It still comes down to you have to apply this to each
Right.
specific project that we're looking at, because they all are different in one respect or another. And, having just a set of very broad principles is very difficult to apply to individual situations. I noticed just quickly going through the Cleveland Heights one here, it did not look like automobiles and trucks were at the bottom of the line of things they were going to consider when designing streets.
Well, and to emphasize where that idea came from, our comp plan, that was an idea that was in our comprehensive plan. And the idea is that all of these uses have to be accommodated, but that the most vulnerable, obviously a pedestrian, is as long as a street is designed for the most vulnerable, then in theory everybody can use the street safely. If you're in a metal box, you have a much higher degree of safety, unless you hit another metal box, I suppose. But if you're a pedestrian, you're going to lose that crash with someone in a vehicle. So I think it's just the principle of it. It's not to say we don't have cars on all of our streets. I mean, there's maybe some streets that can't and shouldn't have cars. We've discussed that in downtown and in certain parts of the city where, creating more of a pedestrian-oriented street is perfectly, there's a lot of communities that are doing that now.
Well, and we're doing some of this just in a different way. I mean, Mark, you and the rest of the planning group provide baseline insight on what our master plans say about ped connectivity needs, bike connectivity expectations. So we can pass that along to designers right off the bat. We don't call it complete streets with capitalized letters, but effectively that's what we're trying to do.
I agree with that. We've had an eye towards implementing complete streets now for quite some time, but we do have the challenge in the community of when we go to a neighborhood that doesn't want sidewalks, for example. It's we haven't had that standard response for how to deal with that. Pardon me, I have a lot of background noise here.
Well, Mark, at what stage is this? I mean, are you at the point where you're ready to take something to the council to end up having a policy that's got some specifics in it for people to follow, or are we still at kind of a talking and conceptual aspiration?
Yeah, I wanted your feedback. I mean, if everybody said they like the policy as written, then yes, it can start moving towards the council. But if you would like, or giving me some specific feedback to, maybe you want the policy overhauled to reflect this Cleveland Heights approach, for example, or maybe you want us to come up with some performance measures. That's the sort of feedback we want. It's I don't have a deadline of taking this to the council at the first meeting in July. That's not
Okay.
where we're at. This is not this is a working document at this point.
All right. Well, I think some performance measures would certainly be very helpful, because somewhere along the line, you're going to have to measure how we're doing with this policy. And I personally, I think the shoulds are better than the wills and shalls, because I don't know that we're really at the point yet of saying we shall do this in all situations.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily possible to say that in all situations, but, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the sidewalks at Lake Mendota or what was it, Lake Mendota Drive? It just wasn't room for them. I mean, we're going to have exceptions, but I think at all possible, we need to have some guidelines that we can use in 90% of the cases.
Okay.
Or just, you know, even just, I mean, not necessarily written as much as referenced. I don't know if there is is there anything that succinctly defines complete streets concept? Or is it just, you know, the individual communities that are doing the definition?
That's a good question. Mark, do you know if this has an actual agreed upon definition across various governments?
One can easily find definitions on various websites. They don't all necessarily say the same thing, but they convey a similar concept. So I don't know if there's, there isn't a specific, like I don't have any one sentence memorized,
There isn't a national standard at this point.
Well, I mean, I have to look at the, this model, the elements of a complete streets policy. Probably the first sentence on the website probably gives you a definition. So, I don't, if you look at the resolution, I don't recall how I started that now, but I think I incorporated a definition in there. Well, maybe not. Anyway.
Yeah,
It's basically the second whereas, essentially that one, the design and operations of the entire right-of-way balance the safety and convenience of all road users, regardless of age, ability, mode of transportation. I mean, that's one way to define it. There's various ways to describe it.
I think too, they're all after the same thing. There's
Right.
a general sense that street design had become too auto-centric, and it really needs to fall back and prioritize some other uses besides cars. But how to say that and how to do that may not necessarily fit neatly into a bunch of shalls and standards. I think the city took a really big step in, I want to say 2006, in adopting a whole palette of standard cross sections for various kinds of land uses. Prior to that, we had two. Do you want a residential street or do you want a commercial street? And now it's this whole range of how much on-street parking do we expect, how much mobility do we expect, and all that baked into the standard cross sections for the various land uses.
Well, I don't know, Mark, do you think we provided you some feedback here, or are you looking for something more specific?
You've provided feedback to answer the question. This is not, these sort of discussions are not easy because, it's hard to take a 3-page document and do you want to be detailed and talk about individual words, or do you want to talk about big picture concepts? I'm hearing, I don't necessarily have clear direction from this discussion, but I will obviously listen to the Planning Commission's feedback tomorrow as well, and then I will meet with my colleagues, including Sean, to discuss how best to respond to the input we received. So if this is the extent of your discussion, your input at this point, that's your prerogative, and we will take all the input we get to heart and come up with revised resolution.
All right, committee, is there any other comments you would like to make? Any other suggestions with respect to the policy? or
So
Mark?
I have a question is, Sean, if there's a policy that's put together and obviously the policy is going to be a little bit broad, but if you put a policy together, then it can come back to you and staff and public works then to figure out, here's the policy, here's what we think that we want, how do we get to that point? I mean, isn't it almost two different, you come up with the policy, this is the direction we want to go. And then you have another document that says, and I'm not trying to create more work, but something that takes in and says, this is how we're going to get to this point. Because when Bike and Ped looks at it, they see something different. When Plan Commission looks at it, they see something different. But when streets actually get built, it comes here.
Mhm.
It comes to engineering. So is it a deal that we come up with the policy and then once we understand what we want, then we figure out how we get there?
It might be iterative, and I think no matter what policy we start writing, as it evolves and as we start learning a little bit about what does this mean, and how do we really want to apply it, we'll just change the policy as we go. I wouldn't be at all surprised if what ends up being approved gets changed within a few years. That wouldn't surprise me. I just think right now we don't have anything written down really that says how we want to prioritize various road users while designing a road.
So
I happen to know that we want
point,
sidewalks. Oh, sorry, Dan.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. To that point, then bullet point number 5 here gives an outline.
That for
Right.
me is a big thing to point to a designer and say, we want these things connected, we want them complete, we want sidewalks on both sides. You know, we want to make sure that if there's a likelihood of bicyclists using this road, that either means bike lanes or at least room for bikes, that they don't feel squeezed between traveling vehicles and parked vehicles. Or
But
at
let's
least not all day.
leave a little room in the middle for trucks and cars to get where they need to go.
Yeah, find your way. Well, but I think that's what this is saying. And if the city wants something different, if the city's position is, nah, the way things have always been is good, well, let me know that. You know, because then I'm just beating my head against the wall. I'd rather stop. So for me, yeah, 5 would be good direction in a policy kind of statement.
Okay. Does that help you, Mark?
Yes.
All right, anyone else? Any comments, suggestions?
So this is Kendra, and I just wanted to reiterate what I was hearing. So what Mark is going to do is take this back and then merge some of the suggestions that you're hearing now, Mark, with what you wanted to produce, this more in line with the Cleveland Heights kind of template. So you're going to kind of merge them together, present that again, and work with city staff, and then come back to these committees with that. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, if you like the structure that I have now, you know, I'm not looking to, I don't need to overhaul it, but if you want me to adapt that format of Cleveland Heights or you know, the model language, I can do that too. I just want to direct for it.
Okay, and that's what you were looking for, is a direction of this
Right.
format versus that format. And then just from a city staff perspective, which one did you like? The Cleveland Heights one because that gave better structure to the city staff?
You know, I like things with headings, you know, where you can just look at a couple words and you know what the paragraph is about. But you know, this one frankly was largely there were 2 or 3 committees, Milwaukee, Stevens Point, La Crosse, that you know that I consulted. Madison's actually working on a policy that they call also Green Streets policy, that you know, but they haven't according to their website a couple of weeks ago, they had not updated their page. So I don't know where they're at with their policy. So, I just wanted feedback at this point for substance and degree of specificity, the performance measures. I'm hearing that there's a desire to be more specific. So
Okay.
I just wanted feedback before I did any more work on this.
Okay. Sorry, I think that was a rehash of what was said, but thank you for that.
All right, committee, anything else that you'd like to weigh in with? All right, then we may be ready to move on. Mark, thank you for coming and making your presentation, and I hope we've provided something valuable to you that doesn't get undone by the next two committees that you meet with. So,
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, thanks, Mark. Well, with that, then we can move on. Our last agenda item is an update of the Sustainable City Plan. And I don't know whether the committee actually formally referred this to us or not, but Kelly Hilliard, whose staff and our sustainability coordinator did. She wanted to make sure we got it in plenty of time to read it and then make meaningful feedback to her. So I believe I sent it out earlier in June, knowing we were going to miss our last meeting, but we're gathering feedback here.
Sean, sorry, the dog is barking, so hopefully this will not get interrupted, but did Carrie provide you any feedback on this? Because I know this is very much in Carrie's wheelhouse as far as sustainable design and build.
She did not, no.
Okay, when I saw that she wasn't on the meeting tonight, I sent her a message and asked her if she had had a chance, and I hadn't heard back. So I think her notes on it would be very appreciated.
Okay.
I think,
and she can send those straight to Kelly too. She doesn't have to
Okay.
route them through the committee.
okay,
So yeah, that's good input. But no, I didn't hear. I highlighted in here just a bunch of stuff where there were some, I don't know if while making a PDF, it just got rid of a bunch of letters and apostrophes and quote marks, and like the end of a sentence was just missing. I had highlighted just a couple of things that caught my eye as being a little bit more substantive near the end. For those of you who suffer vertigo, close your eyes. One of them was, here. To ensure that development is not vulnerable to flooding. And I don't think that's an achievable goal. So I just want to work with Kelly to see if we can tone that down a little bit. We can do what we can to mitigate the potential for flooding, but there's always some bigger storm someplace. And so we're not ever in a position to ensure that someone is not vulnerable to being flooded.
Good point.
And then the other thing I noted, that all city job postings should require specific competencies related to sustainability. And I don't know if somebody knows what those specific competencies are, or who would be in charge of writing such a thing. So that's just something that caught my eye, and I thought, man, I hope somebody knows how to do that then.
I think that's kind of where I had the idea that Carrie might have some of this, because I know that she might know of somebody who would know of something like that.
Okay.
I think my issue with this in general is it's very lofty. You talk about in the complete streets plan about very measurable goals, and these are, they're measurable. They're just,
Maybe not this year.
yeah. Well, 2022 to 24. I mean, taking the following actions, you can take the actions, I guess, but it's just, there's a lot there.
I thought
Yeah,
this one
so-
was quite well written, though, and I liked the fact that there were measurable goals stated in each one of the sections, even though they're going to be very difficult to attain and measure. At least there was something laid out there that you could kind of get your teeth into.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at this compared to what we were just looking at with the streets one, and how much more comprehensive this is and how very specific.
Yeah, and it's tied back to the comprehensive plan. So, it's not like it just came from out of nowhere.
Mhm.
But that part of the difference is we've been on this for a little while already. So this is a rewrite, not a write.
Gotcha. Okay.
And some of these things, like the food compost, we've tried a couple times here or there, and there was a sentence in here someplace that said like, but I think we could do better, and I thought, way to go, Kelly. So, I didn't have any other specific stuff. I think too, some of it'll prove to be really aggressive and
I saw somewhere in an email or something that there was a list of all the city-owned vehicles,
yes.
and I can't find that. Is that on the internet somewhere, or is it on the?
It is not. No, we reviewed as a committee just the public works vehicles, but it's a spreadsheet with vehicles by department.
Right.
And it's our entire fleet.
All the city-owned vehicles. Is it possible to get a copy of that?
I could send that to you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Are others interested in seeing that?
I mean, I'm interested from the police department point of view. It seems to me like the police department has an awful lot of vehicles, and I don't know how they justify those unless they need a bunch of patrol vehicles for Good Neighbor Fest, but that doesn't justify having 10 patrol vehicles when we only use 3 or 4 at a time.
I
Well, like,
think
a
they're
lot of
all
it-
out, typically. But I'll get you that, Carl.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what I all missed while I got dumped out. There was quite a flurry, but I'm sure I missed something.
I think Kendra was talking and I was talking, and that's, what I was talking about. I think you came in on that.
Yeah, I came in by the food composting mention. So I apologize for that. Is there stuff that I should be jotting down in the minutes because the video is not going to be right, and I just plain missed it.
Kendra, did you want to repeat anything you were talking about while he was gone?
I don't think I was talking about anything while he was gone. You had mentioned something about the electricity. I just made a couple notes, and you had to justify vehicles. That's just what I had written down.
Don, I think you were there when I was talking about the overall cost and how it's going to get paid for. No, that was my big concern, because there's a lot of expense involved in everything in here, and while it's all good, it doesn't define how it would be done and how it would be paid for and where the funds would come from and what the costs are going to be. I mean, there's no even swag at this point as to what costs might be.
And I think I don't think that is what I was getting at when I said they're very lofty goals. They're great goals, but that's a lot to I was trying to scroll up. It's a lot to implement. And it's a lot for the city to undertake. The one thing that kept coming to mind when I was thinking about this is what nonprofit partners, what other city partners can we look to, non-city partners, that would help with some of this stuff? You know, Madison has an abundance of environmental nonprofits around that can connect the pieces to make some of this more feasible and less expensive for the city. So I'm hoping that's something that sustainability is looking at. And I'm sure Kelly is aware of all that and is thinking that way. But it would be beneficial to have the name of some of those partners already identified in this kind of document as we start to plan implementation.
That would be with their permission, of course. You'd
What's
hate to-
that?
That would be with their permission, of course. You'd hate to surprise them by saying, oh yeah, we included you in.
Oh, right, exactly. I'm just wondering if they are already reaching out. It just seems to me that that would have been the first thought, would be to be reaching out to some of those resources that already exist. The composting program being one of them. I know that the university has tried that before. There's other different partners that I think in some of the other parts of it too.
Yeah, some of the like the manure digesters, I think were, you know, people were eyeballing those. Like, how can we turn that into some meaningful energy? Because older stuff like our old landfill has been checked out for exactly that, and it's just useless. So it wouldn't help us at all.
Mm-hmm.
Does the city have a list of air conditioning units that are city-owned that are using R22 or R12? R12 is probably not, but R12 is for much bigger systems, but R22 is pretty common for light commercial and you know, and I think you know, they encourage the replacement of those refrigerants, especially R22 with some of the more current refrigerants that are much more environmentally sound would make sense. And they mention that, but I think we need to start with a list of what do we have?
I don't know if that's for this report though, Carl. I mean,
No, I know, but it's just one of the implementation things.
Yeah, agreed.
And I suspect, yeah, Kelly would get into that. If somebody says, yes, this is a thing we want to get after,
Right.
she'll probably first figure out, well, what do we have? And what of that is the worst? Let's start there.
Never knew I could reach so well backwards.
Yeah. Just hold your screen upside down. It'll all work fine. Yeah, I don't know if there was any particular place you wanted to get to.
Mentioned the pig waste digesters. They do create energy, and they are using the energy. There's a big generator out at the one that's currently out there to the what is that, west of town.
Ryder Road.
Typically, I don't know if they create enough energy to put back into the grid, but they typically can energize themselves.
All right, anyone else have comments, suggestions that we would like to offer to the draft sustainability plan? I don't know, Sean, I don't know if you know either. Do you know exactly where this one is, this plan? Is this going this obviously went to a number of committees for feedback, but then it goes to the council for final approval
I
when
think,
somebody incorporates all the feedback.
I think Kelly's trying to get it back to the Sustainability Committee first. So
Okay,
to take all this input and boil it down as best she can and get it back to the Sustainability Committee for them to get to the council.
okay. Anything else that you think Public Works needs to contribute to the process here, committee?
I think, Bob, what you're looking for is in her memo. It's on page 25 of the agendas
The packet 25.
attached. But she says, please direct all comments in writing to Kelly Hilliard. Sustainability Committee will review the comments received at our meeting on July 18th and present a final version to the council in August.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that's right.
I may write, I mean, I think she'd probably take individual comments from the rest of us too.
Yeah.
And I may write a few things.
Carl, I see there's a good opportunity for us old retired guys to get back into engineering.
You know, the legal industry almost shut down during COVID. I don't have anything to do. I mean, one of the other questions I got is I work hard not to put any biologics into the trash. And I don't know if this is right or not, but I went out 7 years ago when we renovated our house and I bought a real high-end incinerator. It's a 3-stage. It claims to do rib bones, but I don't put rib bones down it, but I pretty much put all our biological waste down that garbage disposal. I mean, it gets rid of the methane gas generation. I don't know if it's, appropriate to put
Not
it into,
true. Not
into
true.
the sanitary system, but it, theoretically, it gets rid of the methane gas generation. So
Yeah,
I
until
don't
it
know
gets
if that's
to
the way to
that.
do it or not, but that's what I get rid of putting biologics in the trash anyway.
Yeah. I tell you that like vegetative matter, I would put in a compost bin before I would put it down at a garbage disposal.
Yeah, but with the compost, you're generating methane.
Well, it's going to go to a sewage treatment plant anyway, so it's still going to break down someplace. But I've known people that have had routine calls to Roto-Rooter because they've just clogged their pipes with stuff, that
Most garbage
in particular.
disposals don't like grapefruit rinds, for example.
Yeah, this one does, Bob.
Does it?
Oh yeah, it takes everything. I've been doing it for 7 years. I never had an issue.
It's in your kitchen sink or you have a separate room for it?
No, it's in the kitchen sink. It's the high end, it's the highest end incinerator there is. It'll do everything.
Is that the 500 horsepower one?
All right,
So
hey,
we-
Bob, I think we've diverted here, so I might move that we adjourn.
That's always in order. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Sean, I have one question for you when we're off the record here.
Let me turn off our recording now.
Yeah.